This is Aliens and Artists, part 2 of our conversation with Christina Engleheart. I'm your host, Stuart Davis. Christina is a multimedia artist. For years, she and famed Italian director Federico Fellini experienced contact with non-human entities, which dramatically impacted their lives. She's about to share how, at the behest of these entities, she moved to Rome in order to be closer to Fellini, who the entities referred to as the Green One.
So while I had yet not moved to Rome in that early beginning, the beginning of 1983, because 85, because we met in 84. I met Federico in October of 84, of course, writing to him as he returned to Rome, and now we're 1985. And then I decided that I had to go to Rome. And the voices had called and said, you know, you need to be with the Green One. And I had just come from a trip and I wasn't working, because how do you really have a normal functioning life when you're running around following these commands? So I said, well, I hung up the phone with them. And then I just kind of talked to the ceiling. I said, well, how do you think I'm going to get the money to pay for this? And no sooner did I say that, my door buzzer rang. And I opened the door and there was nobody there. And there's a shoebox with the exact money that I needed for a round trip ticket. So I was like, oh, how did this happen? And I was in a gated, you'd have to jump over the gate. And the gate was a 12-foot high gate with spikes on the top. So I couldn't imagine anyone climbing over it. And within a moment of me saying the one thing, there's a box. $1,200. 5s, 10s, 20s, just counted it all out. So, okay, I'm supposed to go. Dude, if you ask me how the hell, I don't know. Was I losing my mind? I became more and more susceptible that they could render, like I said, that guy at the airport with the piece of fabric in the envelope. So I felt like they could render it. So a friend of mine was staying with me because they were going to take me to the airport in the morning for this trip, now that I had the money with the shoebox. And in the morning, my friend says, who were you talking to on the phone last night? I wasn't talking to anyone. I'm a very light sleeper. I wasn't talking to anyone. He goes, oh, no. You got the phone rang. You were walking around. You said these crazy things and you said the flight number. So he said things that only I knew. So to this day, I had no memory. So I said, oh, they are able to get into my head and make me not like do things physically that I had no memory of. So that was a sign of what that guy in the airport went through, because that was one symbol. And then another time I'm sleeping in my apartment before I make this move to Rome. I'm by myself, I'm in my bed and I'm sleeping and I awoken. Now I'm fully awake, I'm not sleeping, and I try to get up from bed and I couldn't move. I was like stiff. I couldn't open my eyes, couldn't do anything. And I'm like, now I'm panicking because I'm like, oh my God, I'm like frozen in my body. I'm fully awake, I'm panicking. And I felt things pushing on me. I felt hands of some kind of energy just pushing down on me. And I was scared the hoots. And it reminded me when I was a young girl in my 12, 13, 14 years old, that every so often I felt that spirits would visit me because I'd be in bed and I'd feel like a paranormal experience that I was immobile, or I'd hide under the covers and I felt something pushing down on me and there was nobody in the room. So I had a few of those moments, and here was another one. But this one, I couldn't move. And I was trying to open my eyes to see. I wanted to see them. I was like trying to move. And then as soon as they left, I was trying to turn so much, I literally fell out of the bed. I was terrified. I was like, oh, wow. So they are letting me know they can touch me. They can get in my mind. They can call me. They can make things move. So I'm now like, I'm not going to mess with these guys. When they say do something, I'm going to do it. Federico fell down the stairs, hurt his ankle, exactly the time I called. So, all right. now they call, now that I have this money, they call again and they say, they gave me a date and they said, you are to go stand at midnight in front of Cafe Greco and wait for your next command. And hung up. Cafe Greco, Cafe Greco. The only Cafe Greco is in Rome. So here I'm in LA. And I said, oh, I got the money, shoebox money. I got, I guess I have to go to Rome and on this date, be there. And I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? You know, so again, tell nobody. I go to Rome. I was making 7 trips. By the time I physically moved there, I made 7 trips before I have to stay there because this back and forth was exhausting and yet it was an adventure. So I fly to Rome. I'm staying, and this is at another little quaint hotel. At midnight, I walk to Cafe Greco. Now in Rome, all the shutters can snap, and they're like panels. They're not fixed shutters. They can lock them. So I'm now walking through the center of Rome, and all the buildings are closed. It's a ghost town. And I'm walking there. I felt like, oh my God, I look like a hooker, you know, walking the streets at night with nobody. So I stand in front of Cafe Greco and I think maybe they're going to send a spaceship and come and get me. I had no idea what to think because there was nobody. It was midnight. Everything was like a ghost town. So I kind of pushed myself back into the door crevice of this hotel, not to be seen. I didn't know what to do. It just felt like trouble could happen. So as I'm sitting there and I look at my watch, and now it's exactly midnight. I look up the street, I look down the street, and all of a sudden, exactly midnight, I see someone turn the corner and is moving in my direction. And as I see this person moving in my direction, their head is down, their hands in their pocket, and they're just walking. I'm like, I wonder who this person is. And as they get a little closer, I recognize it's the blue one. It's Andrea. So when he gets in, I'm waving. I go, Andrea. And he walks over to me and goes, what are you doing here? I said, the voices told me to be here. I guess I'm supposed to talk with you. Oh, I don't believe you. I don't, because he was always the doubting Thomas. He always thought I was behind this. I said, no. Look, I'm here. Look. I said, so you must have gotten a call to meet me here. He goes, no, I forgot where I parked my car. I've been walking up and down the streets. I'm having a little fling with this girl, and my other girlfriend doesn't know. And I came to, he was beyond belief that how could the voices have almost rendered him like combing the streets to meet at that moment. So that was a phenomenon. I said, well, then walk back to my hotel and stay here for the night. It's midnight, and let's talk about this. So we'd go to my room and we'd talk, and I always was trying to give my interpretation. And then he went to use the bathroom. And while he was in the bathroom, taking a shower, I guess, the phone rang and it was them. And they said, you're talking too much. Simplify. Don't be so complicated. He doesn't understand when you get complicated. So I'm like, oh, I guess they're hearing me talking. So we come out of the bathroom. I said, well, they just called. No, they didn't. You're making this up, because he was, So I tried, so he stayed the extra day because I begged him. I said, this is too canny that I'm here, you're here, please just stay here and let's just, he said, all right, I'll leave tomorrow afternoon. So he stayed in the room with me, because we already if we go back in time, back to Los Angeles in that original trip, you'll remember that while the days that we had to make the music and the instruments, there was a point where the voices were asking me to sleep first with Federico. And then while I'm sleeping next to him, they called and they said, no, we now want you to go over to the blue. And I thought, oh, but nothing happened with Federico. They told me never to have sex with him, but to be as close as possible, which to him was, he couldn't believe it, because he's a known Lothario, and here he's got an attractive woman and he's told she can sleep with her, but you can't touch her. Very Gandhi-like. But I could sleep with the other guy. And so I just followed instructions. And Andrea, he always resented that, because I don't think he ever liked me, but somehow we were drawn into this situation. So of course, when we're now jump months ahead, we're in Rome with this whole thing with the street corner and Cafe Greco, he's thinking I'm behind this, and he's arguing with me. And of course, I was trying to use all my esoteric verbiage, getting complicated, only to be told, keep it simple. He leaves the next day. And now I'm in Rome. And so, of course, I go to meet Federico. And he was very happy. And that's when I really, that was, again, 7 trips before I actually moved there. I was going like once a month back and forth to be, until I really realized that I have to completely be there. And of course, Federico, when I'd meet him on the sets, he introduced me to his first assistant, his first AD, which then I fell in love with. So I had a relationship and eventually married, who Eugenio, hearing all this story, knowing Andrea everything, he couldn't figure out, and he was very upset that I was running over constantly to Federico's office and constantly meeting Federico in private, and he would say, you're cheating on me, you're having this affair with him. I said, no, I promise you, we are not physical, we can't be physical. He didn't believe it, but the fights we had over that. And so I'm just giving you, sort of like leading up to. So we have the hotel thing, the meeting on the street corner, the hotel with the switchboard. Just constant things are in that time period. And one thing that Federico absolutely loved, and which is what I did pretty much on a daily basis, we would get together. He loved that I did I Ching, tarot, numerology. So while he was working on Ginger and Fred, he would, explain to me he's doing this movie without a script. And he says, I don't know what to do tomorrow for the film, so throw the cards. What should I do? So half of the movie was all done through my tarot reading, which I thought was, very impressive, that he allowed me to use my metaphysical energy or learnings to, give my 2 cents for his films. And then that became, from the next 3 movies, he did Ginger and Fred, La Intervista, La Voce della Luna. The 3 other movies afterwards, always, Christina, what do the cards say? What do the cards say? Throw some I Ching. So that was like what really bonded us, is that we had that metaphysical practice, and always, what are these voices? What are these voices? And, and I would always come in from my human tools, which is what I read in my past, believing in reincarnation and so forth. So I'm in Rome. I receive a call from them, again, all the many calls, and they said, I'm allowed to ask a question. So mind you, every time they called, I would just listen. I really never said anything. I would say it in my mind, and they would answer me, but I never verbally said anything. It was all mind-to-mind connection. But here was a time they asked, they said, you can ask a question. So I was like, oh my God, what do I think about Jesus Christ? And then it just blurted out, is there such thing as reincarnation? I figured, let's hear it from these guys. And they said, absolutely. You reincarnate many times. You're an energy being. In fact, you are one of us, and you've reincarnated on this earth to work with us. So, and we will always be connected. So I was like, okay, so what does that mean? So for some reason, whatever essence or energy that I reincarnated at one point of my existence, or some essence, I was from wherever they are from, this dimensional world. And this to me was fascinating, because I was like, what, that makes sense. I mean, I do believe in that before we entered a body, we're a spirit being that neither lives nor dies, that it chooses to come in, or can choose to come into a body. Apparently, I was chosen to come into a body, to reincarnate many times. They said I lived hundreds of times, and I will always be connected to them. So when our communication, telephone calls stopped, I would still feel their presence. I would see blotches of color just in a corner of a room. So I would see And I always thought that was them. And it would either be pink or green. And in fact, last night, before knowing that I would make this phone conversation with you, Zoom call, in the middle of the night, I woke up and the whole room glowed in green. So I said, oh, boy, that hasn't happened in a while. So I'm going to take that as a sign that the green one will be Federico, sort of an energetic spirit green came through very strong. I kept blinking my eyes and walking and, it was so strong. It was so strong, like a green glow in the room.
Wow.
So that happened last night, but that is what I received on a regular basis. So that, I can't tell you if it's disturbed me, but from where I am and where I've learned in my own physical practice, yes, I do believe that most of us come from something. Our energetic being, our essence is on a spirit level. I will have people who will say to me, Christina, this reincarnation is all hooey-fooey. I don't know why you believe in this. And they don't even know. I don't even tell half the people what I've gone through. They'll just hear me talk about it. And my only defense is I'll say, well, there's really two ways to reincarnate. There's the obvious one is genetically, biologically. And I would say to people of science, I'd say, well, are you not because the word to reincarnate means to return to flesh. So within each one of us is our ancestors, the DNA of our ancestors. Obviously, we can do 23andMe and the chromosome testing. We can even see if we have some, Neanderthal in us and where we've come genetically through different parts of the globe. So I've always, believed that parts of our ancestors, that hidden DNA, remember, we're only tapping into a very small portion of it. There's so many unlocked things, but everything within each one of us are fragments, genetic codes from our ancestors. So that is one way to reincarnate. So each one of us is a combination of all our ancestors that have, mutated with your mother and father, each generation bringing new, fresh DNA to combine to you, but you're actually carrying within each one's DNA, your mother and father's ancestries on both sides down to the original humans or of what original man was. So that's one way to reincarnate. That's to me the obvious one. That's the biological one. That to me, I can dispute anyone who doesn't believe in reincarnation by using that terminology. And then there's the one that I believe that has to do with soul vibration, that a soul can actually lift itself up from their ancestral and rise above. And so what I mean by is if your great-great-grandfather was a shoemaker and then your father was a shoemaker and then you are either into shoes or not, or whatever the lineage is, for your DNA, for your spirit to have come from a whole different area, because remember, I do believe in parallel selves, that we're not just one entity of our DNA, that we're also a soul collection. We started this planet with, a few hundred people, and here we are, a few billion people. So I do believe that there's that kind of reincarnation on a soul level of, and the people and the Jesus Christ and the Mahatma Gandhis, the people who have raised their vibration so high that they can actually either choose to stay in this realm or transfer and transpose to another realm, or to go to a whole different, go outside their DNA and influence the spirit or the body of such, because that's the magic of spirit. And if you think of, whatever religion has taught us, the life everlasting, any esoteric information we get that is kind of comes to us, why some people have musical talents and some people have scientific, there's, someone will say, well, I never had someone play piano in my lineage, but I took to piano as if I had played piano before, for example. So I'm open to all of those things. Those things have, in my still quest of what can be, even here we are speaking today and asking questions and reminding ourselves, to me and the audience that you have, the audience that I would believe that would listen to this, first of all, are fascinated by what could be alien, what is, and that's such a, it's not the best terminology, but that's what we've referred to it, because alien is anything not born on this planet, supposedly, or some other dimension. So, and then we have the artists, so for someone like myself, I consider myself artistic, paint, write, poetry, metaphysical arts. So I believe that spirit actually is very attracted to that. Music is a vibration. Music, I think, in and itself, sound is also a dimension in its own right, just like light, just like time. So I think the voices, were trying to let us know that color, sound, of the frequency of that, and the combination of that. I mean, afterwards, when I came back finally from Rome and I was back in America, I went to a museum and the artist was doing musical notes and colors. And he had painted an opera all by colors. It was fabulous. It was such a beautiful painting in its own right. And I thought, oh, I'm meant to see this, because this is an ideal, an identity. And I believe that's what gets into an artist's heads. When he feels color, when he feels sound, when he feels vibration, he's tapping into something. If you want to call it esoteric, I don't like to use the word alien, because alien makes you think of something from another planet with oblong heads and ears and eyes and so forth. And that's available and possible as well to believe in. When I was in Rome, and I told you that dream, that not the dream, in that trying to waking time when I was awake, and yet I felt being touched and pushed on, and my whole body it felt like 20 people were pushing down on me, and every part of my body. It was terrifying. When I was in Rome, that happened again there too. And another time I was sleeping and I woke, and I was in that frozen place. I couldn't open my eyes, but I could see in my mind. And here is where they first appeared to me, what you looked like. So this was pretty scary, because up until then it was just this colorful cloud or objects moving or the telephone call. But in this one time, I do believe they woke me and they wanted me to see them. And I was in Rome, laying in my bed, very awake. I couldn't move. My eyes were closed, and yet I could see 4 tall faces looking down, and their faces were shape-shifting. They had, if you look at an oil spot on the street, it kind of goes pink and purple and blues, and it shifts colors like mercury does. And like an oil spill, that mixing of colors. That's what their faces were. So it wasn't a solid face. It was a morphetic, shifting face, but they had big eyes. And the big eyes looked at me, and I felt they looked right into me. Very much like Whitney Schreiber's big eyes on Communion book. And by the way, when I first saw that book cover, because those eyes were what I had seen, and I bought that book and I read it, the dates that Whitney Schreiber was given of his visitation were the same dates that I was being visited on in those 1984, 1985 dates. So I thought, one day I got to meet Whitney. And to this day, I would love to meet him, because I thought there's some collective consciousness going on there from what he was dealing with. And I thought that's too ironic that the same dates, he was very specific and wrote dates down in his book Communion. And those are the same dates that I was visited. So 1984, after the harmonic conversion, or in part of that, maybe that was when we had an opening where a lot of energy came into our planet, kind of then chose the people that it needed to utilize to make this communication with. So that's another thought. But back to this, the 4 of them looking down at me, I could feel when they looked at me with those eyes, didn't see their mouths move. They had almost like zero mouths, it was the tiniest, smallest mouth they could, but they're shape-shifting. And I was so scared because this was now, they let me see them. And now, of course, when then they made everything dark again and stepped away and I sat up from this, I was shaking so much. I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I don't want to see them again, because it was very scary. And yet I had to be used to this. And then I remembered, this was the faces that I painted back in high school in the art classes. This shape-shifting, multi kind of face. So I realized, oh, they said they know me. I've had this kind of a face show up to me before in my artwork. So I said, And I've always believed I was being watched since a child, since I started doing metaphysical work. I always felt like something was watching me. I didn't think alien. I was always hoping angelic, but, what are angels? What are entities? So that was sort of a comprised area of seeing them, hearing them. Of course, the phone, walking by any phone, I'd pick up. I always knew. I could walk down the street in New York City. The phone rang. If I was right in front of it, I'd pick it up. It was them. And they always say, we're watching you. And which didn't help. I was terrified by that. But I had to not lose my mind. And by the way, I thought to myself, most people have a tenth of this esoteric connection and they lose their minds. They go bananas. And I thought, I think maybe that's why they also picked me, that I wouldn't lose my mind. Now, back to when I ran into Andrea De Carlo in front of Cafe Roma. They had called me 2 weeks before. So that was a moment that I knew that they are outside of time, because they would tell me something and then it would happen in that date that and this was not just Cafe Roma, there was other opportunities. They would call me and say, do this at this time on this date. And then what happened would be, so it was as if they knew it would happen days, weeks, or months before. So I always thought, since they said they were always that I'm part of them, in whatever degree, I always thought, well, one day I'm going to have to write a book. Well, one day I'm going to have to talk about this on podcasts. One day I'm going to have to, maybe do a film, whatever. I never felt at that time, or Federico, that they laid out the rule. We have to do this for this reason. They were hinting with the music and the sound and the lights and the artistry, and they wanted a film. That was why they reached out to Federico. They wanted some kind of an explanation. But I think that where they're from and where we are from, the differences of how we operate in our highly emotional, highly confused, narcissistic world, and all the things that we go through, that, we are sometimes unable to really hear what's being told to us. And of course, people use religion as a great explanation, and I'm all for, faith and belief in spirituality. Religion is like sort of history of mankind incorporating God. And I very much do believe in God and in Jesus, and, great spiritual people come to this world to do great good. And also there are plenty of people come to do great harm. I never felt that the voices, were out to hurt us, but they did not relate to us humans in the same physical way. I do believe that music, art, sound, colors was how they got into our minds. And the more artistic, the more esoteric, the more open you were, was an easier way to approach than someone who was a naysayer and didn't believe it. And even if you had phenomena happen, oh, that was just a coincidence. So, you have that. And to your audience that are listening right now, everyone says, well, what did you learn out of it? What did you get out of it? I am still getting it. I believe that they showed me that time they can operate outside of it. So part of that timing is still unfolding now, because I'm still learning things. I'm learning more each day. And the more the world finds people like ourselves who are open to communicate the possibilities and have our own, like you probably have visitation or unusual things that have happened in your life that keep you open. But I will say this, that the part of the mind, the hypothalamus, the part of the mind that lights up, you know, I love it. I once watched a video where they were doing brain surgery and they had on a thin as a fiber, a camera go into the person's mind. It was the first time I saw this, and how it looked like a cloudy, dark sky with lightning bolts flashing. And I was like, what? That's going inside our brains, these flashes of energy and light. And I'm like, oh, so every time you have a bright idea or a synapsis of some kind, it flashes. And I was so fascinated by the human mind. And then I realized, oh, well, that's what halos are on these great saints, that their mind lights up so much that there's a drawing of a halo, that the mind, when it's in its most cosmic, you know, realm of the whole mind synapses, is that you can actually see and hear and feel and communicate with something, as the great saints did when you see halos on things. So I always thought, oh, that's what that means. And I also thought that my name is Christina Engleheart, which is, if you break it up, Christ in an angel's heart. And I did that once doodling, and I thought, oh, so this angelic, the heart that I have, which also has the word art. So I have art, heart, angel. And I thought, okay, this name, I didn't pick it, this was given to me. And there's always little reminders that stay connected, which what we're doing right now. We're connecting right now, of trying to see what this means. Why did this happen? And I think the day that, if this ever turns into a film, the book, there'll be more messages coming, because I think the day that happens, the director who's actually doing the film will receive information, will receive a psychic phenomena in their own right. Because I think that when you are tapping into this dimensional communication, I think that in the moment that we're just open to understanding it, we're actually making a connection without anyone having to get into our minds or make a phone call or such. And of course, people have said, well, do they still call you? No, they're not using the telephone anymore. And boy, it would be the easiest thing to do, because now cell phone, internet, who knows, maybe all these 5G is knocking the spirits out. I don't know, because, you know, 5G is very powerful now. There's so much frequency going on from all our technology and wireless stuff. I have no idea if this is helping or hindering contact. But I am not receiving the phone calls as of this day, but these rare glimpses of these cloud colors do appear. And my own readings, I still have a large clientele of people I do psychic readings for. My readings are sometimes, I mean, I don't even know where I get this information from, but I'm astounding to those I read for. So I think that I have to keep doing that, that's part of my mission, is to communicate something. And it's not necessarily I need to communicate with the afterlife. There are people I'm sure that can do it, but for me, it's something, it's a different frequency. And I'm here to help. So I'm here to inspire, I'm here to help, I'm here to be an artist, I'm here to find ways to use words in our limited diction of words that can impress people that we are involved with the unknown. So, and also one of the last times that I received a call, and mind you, the whole time I was living in Rome and I was married to Eugenio, he was like, why aren't they calling me? I know Andrea, I know Federico, I know Maurizio, I know Tullio, I know everybody, but I'm not getting the call. And he so wanted to believe this, and he thought I was just crazy, and that didn't help the marriage. But it was our wedding day, and he was just off to go and get ready at his parents' home. I was getting ready at our home, and I was in the bath, and it was 8/8/88. It was 8 in the morning, and we were going to have our wedding at 1800 hour. And the phone rings, and he comes running into the bathroom. He said, they called. I finally got a call. Oh my God, they knew my name. They said my name. And they said, I felt that, what you talked about. I felt it. And they said, and they spoke in Italian to me. With me, they spoke English. With whomever, whatever language you spoke, that's what they spoke to you. And he said that we cannot come to your wedding. Siamo I marziani. That means we are Martians, because in the Italian language, there is no word for alien. This American word alien is now what they say, alien. But then the word for alien was Martians. And so he said, we are I marziani. Just look at the sky at 10:22, and we will send you a signal. So he tells me this. So I said, great, 10:22. But, you know, in Rome, they use military time. So that would be 22:22. So if you add 22:22, 2, 4, 6, 8. So I'm like, oh man, they got with the 8s. So it was very interesting that 8 in the morning, 1800 hours, 22:22. So now here we are, we leave the wedding party, we go up to the roof of where we had our wedding, and we look up at the sky. You know, it's a night sky. And I see an airplane, you know, like an airplane, but it was very high up, but yet the light was very strong as a starlight. And it made a figure 8 in the sky. And I said, that was them. He goes, no, that was just a plane. I go, when can a plane do a figure 8 and follow that? I mean, he was like, no, that can't be them. That was them. To me, that was them. And I took that as a great gift from them. And that was the last phone call on 8/8/88 And when I thought of it later on, that even the numbers they chose added up to 8. That was a very high vibrational evening, and that was very special to us. Federico received a call afterwards, I think 1 or 2 more calls, and then then there was a day when he said, I'm not going to make this movie. He did a graphic novel, Trip to Tulum. Andrea wrote a book called Yucatan. So if your followers, listeners want to look up Andrea De Carlo's book, Yucatan, he gave his own perspective. He didn't want to use names. He had his own way of describing the story. I didn't want to make it like a story. I wanted to give the facts of this and this and this and this and this happened. Federico used the graphic novel, which first came out on the front covers, 6 covers of the Corriere della Sera, which is a very famous newspaper, the Corriere della Sera. So he did the front page of each, giving a snippet of his encounters of the story, which then Milo Manara, fabulous graphic artist, did the drawings. And it was so well received, like a cult following, that they went and did Colto Maltese, which is another graphic novel series, and then finally making a book out of it called Trip to Tulum, or Viaggio a Tulum, as it is in Italian, which is in many languages, unfortunately, out of circulation. I bought as many of the books as I can to give to Hollywood celebrities, from Donald DeLine to Marty Scorsese to Oliver Stone. I kept giving this book thinking, if I give it to them, you know, I'll get a movie. And they all said, thank you for the book, we love it, but this is a weird story. And because it was done in a graphic novel, no one felt that it could be done as a graphic. It had to be done real life, even though the graphics were fabulous. And then I met with Haim Saban, and I gave him the graphic novel, and he was the only one who wanted to option the rights to make this a cartoon, an adult cartoon. But Federico did not like the price that he offered, so he shut it down. So it's one of those things where, you know, I felt like, how do I resurrect this graphic novel? And in its own way, there are several other artists, directors who are fancying the idea of telling it but they shouldn't circumvent me because I'm sort of like the nucleus of the story. So, you know, whoever tells the story, if it ever happens, I know that me writing the book was to give my interpretation, because I think the reason, as the female of this group, the pink one, and what does the color pink mean? It's love, it's harmony. Blue is mind color, and Andrea was the mental one. Green is the heart chakra. Federico was the vibration of the heart. He had the heart in the project. You know, the yellow and the orange were, you know, also our mental colors. So I felt that I was given the pink to be the one who would bring this together. And since the book that I wrote, telling the story in my own way, bringing everyone's name and everyone back into the story, I felt that I united this troop of colors trying to tell a story. And here we are today, 2021, and the story is still very fresh. I still feel like I'm living it. I'm not too excited to hear from them anymore, because I don't need to be, I had enough phenomena. I think just seeing that color cloud last night, I was like, okay, you don't have to get too friendly. You can stay over where you help me on another realm. Help me to make connections. And here we are speaking. Here's a connection. So I'm open to that, and I've reached out a few times, and, you know, there will be people who totally think I'm wacky, and actually I have a very stable job, and I'm a very stable person, surprisingly so, because there were times that I thought no one's going to understand or believe me. And luckily, you know, let's call that my artistic esoteric side. But there's no doubt that my life will continue working with people on the esoteric level, working as an artist, working with dimensions, and hopefully inspiring people to believe in something other than the three-dimensional realm, to believe in something. And also, I get to hear other great stories of other people who've had their own connection. So I didn't have a spaceship, but I had levitation. I saw myself outside of the stratosphere looking down at Earth. I saw them. I felt a different vibration. And to those people who have been on board, I don't doubt it. I do believe that there's a multitude of energies and entities that come into this planet. Mine are just this dimensional creature. I'm sure there are other people who have physical creatures. I have some friends that have photographs of, you know, phenomenal spaceships that I know that they didn't forge because, you know, they didn't need to. So I do believe that just like here we are in our own, you know, realm of consciousness, we have different politics, we have different beliefs, we have different things. And to some people, they are as real as the chair we sit on. And so I don't doubt what other people say or believe. I just know that from where I have come from, what I've experienced, I know it's a tool to tap into the artistry of things. So that's why I like so much that your program is called Aliens and Artists. I do really think that the artistic side is that part of the brain, the hypothalamus, wherever that creativity, that synapses of the major light that glows up in our mind, that lights up, that makes the body do things, or the mind see things, or inspire things, or interconnect to whatever energies out there. That fascinates me. That, I think, is still something to be discovered, that maybe a Jung has tried, Carl Jung, or certain people have used through hypnosis. You know, there's some wonderful people who've really tapped into, which, by the way, I'm a huge fan of Carl Jung and Rudolf Steiner, you know, the great philosophers who've, you know, used and know and deciphered anthroposophia, which is sort of the light energy of the things that are the essence of things, almost like a molecular structure, the very light energy of it, that is the stage before the material. You know, they say that before the physical, there is the thought. And that thought, see, that's where You can call it mind or brain, but I think that's where, for me, all creativity stems from.
Be sure to catch part 3 of our conversation with Christina Engleheart. For more information, check the show notes. January 25th, 1967, South Ashburnham, Massachusetts. Betty Andreasson and her 7 children and Betty's 2 visiting parents witnessed multiple non-human entities outside their home. They did nothing about it. The next day, Betty had the odd sense that something else had occurred beyond the sighting of the entities. Over time, through hypnosis, she and her husband would recall abductions, contacts, and sightings that involved highly advanced beings that gave Betty messages about the fate of mankind, and also conducted procedures on her and her husband. A Christian, Betty interpreted the events through her religious worldview. Her case was a launching point of sorts for the abduction phenomenon obtaining a more public profile and beginning to register in the general population. What remains of the more remarkable aspects of her repeated encounters is the elaborate artwork she created, depicting her experiences. While it's common for experiencers to attempt renderings of contact and abduction, Betty's art is particularly detailed and abundant. Many of these images are now standard, including saucer-shaped craft, gray aliens, hybrid fetuses gestating in liquid. But some events she illustrated are truly bizarre, such as the Museum of Time she reported being shown aboard the craft, in which human beings from innumerable different epochs and cultures were preserved in clear cylindrical containers. Also, a circle of humanoid spiritual elders chanting around a globe of light. There were also schematic drawings of the alien technology aboard the craft, an enormous clamshell-like device the entities used to transport her, and a great bird which stood 15 feet tall and shielded Betty's eyes from a blinding light beyond. For a link to the seminal book, The Andreasson Affair by Raymond Fowler, which contains Betty's artwork, check the show notes. Aliens and Artists is brought to you by the Liminal MUSE, offering one-on-one work with me, Stuart Davis. Sessions focus on creativity, spirituality, and transpersonal hypnosis. Go to theliminalmuse.com to book a session, or check the show notes. Hey, thank you for your emails, your detailed emails, such as the one from a listener last week, pointing out that in my Patreon pitch, when I remarked that patrons should move the decimal point several positions to the left, I was actually diminishing the amount of your pledges, not increasing them. Well, Mr. Smart Brain, let me tell you something about aesthetic mathematics, or as it's not known, aesthematics. In aesthematics, decimal points are like nomadic periods. They careen among numbers in a swooning reverie, enwrapped in the beauty of diminishing integers. The vanishing is ravishing. Ask any mathematician, less is more, until it isn't, because when there's nothing left, there's room for everything. So become a patron, or don't. Beauty prospers regardless.
Convulsing, pulsing, blue billowing membrane, seeds unspooled, rush the vein. is in rain.